All right, Larry Krueger here at Levi Stadium with your Pig in a Pickle 49er update brought to you by Pig in a Pickle. Check out Pig in a Pickle at two locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig in a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. And this video is also brought to you by Mojo Fantasy. Check that link in the description. Use the promo code KRUEG, KRUEG, and they will match you up to your first $100. Well, Tuesday down here in Santa Clara as the Niners are getting ready to take on the Green Bay Packers Saturday night at Levi's. The winner moves on to the NFC Championship game. The loser's season comes to a bitter and abrupt end. So Kyle Shanahan spoke first today, talked to us a little bit about the injuries, not practicing today. Cleveland Farrell with the knee, Trey Greenlaw, who's still battling some Achilles pain, Logan Ryan, who's got a groin pull. Limited today included George Odom, who's coming back from the bicep injury, and Eric Armstead with a foot injury. CMC is not on the injured list. He did not practice last week, but he's a full go this week. Kyle Shanahan said that, the Niners have been preparing for Green Bay since the second quarter of the Dallas-Green Bay game in full when they realized Green Bay was going to win that game. In reality, the Niners have been prepping for Green Bay since well before that game. They did a lot of prep for Green Bay, I'm sure, last week. Also, a couple other notes. Adam Peters was introduced as the new general manager in Washington. That was official on Monday, so that is now official, and Peters has moved on. He's out of the building in Maryland now. Shanahan says he's not concerned at all about the rust factor with Brock Purdy, saying that, he hasn't really been on a bye week, that he said we pushed Brock really hard in the meetings and the practices all week long. And then, of course, Brock took first-team reps with Sam Darnold in that Rams game, did everything except for play in the game. So they're not concerned about Brock being rusty in the slightest because they put him through kind of a gauntlet of work and meetings and so on and so forth. I asked him about Joe Barry's defense, and he said, man, that defense looked really good in Dallas. He said they're a sound defense. He thinks they're getting better as the season progresses. Kyle knows Joe Barry because they worked together in Tampa Bay, so there's a familiarity there as well. When it came time to talk about Jordan Love, he said he's come a long way. He's playing at a really high level. He's been consistent. He's taken great care of the football. Kyle noted how he has 21 touchdowns and 1 pick in his last 10 games. He said Matt LaFleur is good at coaching quarterbacks and quarterback technique. So he loves the way Love is looking right now. And obviously he emphasized that he's taking great care of the football. He was asked about if he thought Green Bay was going to be their opponent. And Kyle admitted that in the 10 days off leading into Packers Cowboys, that when they took a deep dive on the Packers and they really looked at what the Packers were on both sides of the ball, that they felt like they had a really good shot to beat Dallas, and sure enough, they did. He mentioned that Matt LaFleur, that he gets his guys playing hard and that his team's improving. He mentioned that Trey Greenlaw is likely to return to practice tomorrow, as is Logan Ryan. He said there's hope that George Odom can be activated Saturday for the playoff game. And then, he was asked about key factors in the game, and he said, it really just comes down to what you do in the 3.5-hour window on Saturday night. You can talk about prep and this and that, all these different factors, but as the old saying goes, it's the way you play, the day you play. And it's really going to come down to how well the Niners execute and how clean of a game they play Saturday night against Green Bay. He said Friday the Niners went live one-on-ones. It wasn't any game plan stuff, but it was one-on-ones. He said they had a really hard practice on Thursday, and then they went live with pads on Friday, and a lot of the players said it was a really good thing. I mentioned to him how Green Bay's unique in that they have 2 starting tight ends and 4 or 5, starting caliber wide receivers. And he just noted that they've drafted well, that they've done a great job of retaining their players, and that their players are continually improving throughout the year, and you can see it on film. He was asked about Christian McCaffrey. He said McCaffrey did not practice at all last week. but that he's geared up and ready to go, same as always. And he said he's been waiting for this moment for a long time. So I think you could probably expect to see the best of Christian McCaffrey on Saturday night. So that was Shanahan. Then they opened up the locker room. We went in. We talked to Fred Warner. Fred said that, he feels like Jordan Love is making great decisions, that his decision-making is really good and has gotten a lot better. He mentioned how Green Bay has their full attention, and that they have to stop Aaron Jones running the ball. They understand that. He mentioned how the Niners offense and the Green Bay offense are similar, so he feels like the practice against his teammates actually helps him in this regard. He basically he talked about a number of things. One of the things he said, it was obviously beneficial to get Eric Armstead back. I asked him about the two young tight ends, Kraft and Musgrave, and he said it's really vital that they tackle well against the Green Bay weapons. He says the rest has given guys their legs back a little bit, and he says that the Niners' preparation this week is going to be absolutely vital, that they have to do a good job in practice. Then we talked to Deebo Samuel. He said, man, we had a good little break. He was asked about the Packers' defense. He said, man, they're flying around, they're fast. And he said, hey, look, Saturday night we're going to be a full go. Everybody's ready to roll. And then I got a chance to do a little one-on-one with Diamador Lenore. He said, Green Bay offensively looks like, the quarterback's playing well. But then he said, hey, it's just another game. He's not going to put too much importance into it. He talked about Love's a great quarterback. He's got a good arm. He says he really trusts his receivers, and that's the thing that stood out to Demo when he watches Love, is the trust that he has with his wide receivers. He said it really helped the defense to go live last week to make sure they didn't get rusty. He said, the bye week has given guys a lot of rest and a chance to heal bumps and bruises. I asked him about, what's the rain going to do to the game, because there is expected to be rain and wind. He says he'll go out in pregame, test the field, and if he feels like he needs, deeper studs, longer studs for his cleats, he'll do that. He'll change out his cleats to longer studs if he feels like the footing is not good enough. I asked him about the 5 young defensive backs and that the Niners are going to lean on, and he's one of them. And he said, man, I have faith in this group. I have faith in every one of them. And then I asked him about last year. I go, the experience factor. You guys have experience Green Bay doesn't really have. And he said, that the experience last year really helps. He says, I don't want to experience that again. And then he added, that's why we're not going to lose. So I don't know if that's a guarantee a la Joe Namath, but that was Demo Lenore saying that's why we're not going to lose, because we don't want to feel that feeling of how it felt to lose to Philadelphia last year. Then we talked to Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa says that that Green Bay's got a similar scheme to the Niners scheme. He says Jordan Love's really good at going through his reads. When he was asked about the key to the game, he said, we got to stop Aaron Jones. We got to run the ball. We got to stop the run. That's what playoff football is all about. I asked him about the combination of Zach Tom and Rasheed Walker, their tackle combination. He said he hadn't studied them as much as he will before the game, but that they look pretty good, that they like to get after it in the run game. So he has more studying to do there. He said Aaron Jones runs the zone scheme really well, and getting a lot of hats on and hits on Aaron Jones is going to be one of the major keys. He also mentioned that there was kind of an illness going around the Niner locker room during the bye week, and now guys are over the illness and freshened up. And he mentioned that Green Bay is clearly a team that's progressed as the season has gone on. And then I had a chance to do a one-on-one with Colton McKivitz, and he said he watched the playoffs this weekend. He says, the rest has made guys' legs a little less heavy. He talked about how, there's a mental drain to football, not just a physical drain, but when you play 20 consecutive weeks and all the memorization, that it can be mentally draining. He said Green Bay really is playing hot and playing fast right now. He said Green Bay's defense plays physical up front. He said Kenny Clark is a great player. He expects to go against Rashawn Gary a lot on Saturday night. and also said Preston Smith likely is going to be on the other side. He says they like to rush 5 a lot. They don't do a lot of blitzing, but they will drop some guys and move some guys around. And I asked him, hey, man, it could be rainy and windy and cold. And Colton, in typical Colton fashion, said, if it rains, it rains. So I asked him about the experience factor, and he says, you know what? It's a toss-up. Yeah, we've got the experience factor on our side, but they're loose and footloose and fancy-free, and they got nothing to lose, so it's kind of a wash. He said it was fun to go one-on-one, ones versus ones Friday and have some live contact. I asked him about Steve Young's comment that, it's time for everybody to kind of recommit to one another, and he said he's not concerned about the Niner commitment, that the focus has been on winning the Super Bowl all year long, and that that they have a tight-knit group. And he understands, it's you win, you move on, you lose, you go home. But there's no extra motivation from Colton's perspective. And then I asked him, so do you have any pregame superstitions? He's like, man, I'm just going to eat my regular pregame meal. I said, Colton, what is that? He's like, buttered noodles, a big plate of buttered noodles and 2 full steaks. So there you go. He's going to have his 2 steaks and his buttered noodles, and he's going to show up Saturday night expecting to be blocking Rashawn Gary. And so there you have it. You're fully updated on a Tuesday from Santa Clara. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for sponsoring the Krug Show. Thanks to Mojo Fantasy for sponsoring this video. Thanks to all you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.